The last year has been amazing for new watch releases, and today we have a selection of some of our top picks from 2023. Now, for those of you who are curious about our star from the thumbnail, you can either skip forward or wait until the end of this video when we'll be talking about the brand new Rolex Daytona. However, we're going to start out with probably what is the smallest change, but still had a relatively large impact on the collection it came from. And that is the Tudor Black Bay GMT with the white dial. Now this pays homage to the reference 6542 with the coveted albino dial, and this shows that Tudor is further doubling down on its position as sort of being the curator or historian of Rolex's back catalog. This not only represents something that pushes it further away from the current GMT Master 2, there is after all no white dial GMT Master 2 available at the time of shooting this, but also it just shows that Tudor is willing to rifle through some of the most sought after models from Rolex's history and incorporate those in a modern package. This is still a proper true GMT with a manufacturer movement, 70 hours of power reserve and a silicone hairspring, all packed into a watch that still has 200 meters of water resistance, and just an overall package that represents supreme value on both the new and the pre-owned market. So a great introduction from Tudor, and definitely something that shows that they are still committed to this line, even though they've only introduced a few variations since its original introduction in 2018. Next, we have a brand that was much more active in 2023 with their model line, and that is TAG Heuer with the Carrera. 2023 introduced tons of great variations, including the glass box, colorful variants on the 42mm versions, and one particular highlight, which is the skipper. Now this is a faithful reimagining of a 1968 classic Heuer Carrera that incorporated a regatta timer. In a yachting race, because of the fact that the boats can't really stay still, knowing the start point is usually determined by a countdown. This can usually be 15 minutes, 10 minutes, or 5 minutes. And that's where regatta timers come in. The idea is that the set countdown time is agreed upon, and the boats will circle around, and as they get closer to that zero mark, they try and get as close as possible to the start line without incurring a penalty for going too early or falling behind by going too late. So TAG Heuer this year decided to reintroduce that variant and even took the time to rejig their caliber TH20 to use the regatta countdown instead of being a normal 30-minute counter. On the other sub-register you have 12 hours, and on the bottom you have running seconds and a date. So very clearly part of the normal TH20 architecture, but it's so refreshing that they, much like Rolex with the Daytona for the 24 hours version, took the time to slightly rejig the movement to make it that much more true to concept. It's also a 39mm versus the normal 42 or 44mm that we see from modern Carreras, and it's even a little bit thinner than the mainstream ones as well, so it maintains its proportions much better. Apart from that, the architecture of the movement is very similar to the Heuer 02, however the main changes are more to do with efficiency and the winding system versus moving any of the on-paper stats. So it's still a column wheel vertical clutch chronograph with 80 hours of power reserve, which is more than enough these days. Next we have a watch that represents not actually a new release for 2023 for the watch industry, but for us here at Chronext. 2023 was the year that we started introducing micro brands, and we've even featured some on the channel already, such as Code 41. Today we're highlighting Squale, or Squale as it's actually pronounced, because this brand, while often associated with being Italian, actually still has its roots in Switzerland. Founded in 1959, it originally used the French word for shark as the name for their brand. However, because the company moved its headquarters to Italy after its founding decades, the association was normally that it had to be pronounced as you would in Italian. However, the E is actually meant to be silent if you pronounce it in French. The brand itself has gone through a few different ownership changes. However, its origins were rooted in first making designs for dive watches and subcontracting and making cases for lots of big brands, including for Zinn, Blancpain, even TAG Heuer. However, now they do make their own watches, most of them equipped with Sellita movements on the inside, making them very affordable when you compare them to a lot of other brands. And this is a brand that still has history, and in the case of this 1521, also feature 500 meters of water resistance, courtesy of their own design, which is one of the ones that they license out to some of those bigger manufacturers. So definitely a great addition to the Chronext catalog, and we are even an authorized dealer of them, so you can get these brand new from us. But now is probably the watch you've all been waiting for, and that is of course the brand new 2023 Rolex Daytona. In this case we have a reference 126519, which is the white gold variant with the Oyster Flex band. Now on the face of it, this may seem very similar to its predecessor. However, Rolex actually has gone to the trouble to make lots of changes. While incremental, they still have a huge impact on the watch itself. On the outside, the biggest change for the Oyster Flex equipped variants is that it now features the glide lock, which gives you much more flexibility compared to the EasyLink it had before, and this is in keeping with what we've seen on the Yachtmaster as well as the Skydweller. All of them now featuring the glide lock allows you to have much more flexibility in terms of the sizing and makes up a lot more for the fact that there are only certain fixed sizes for the Oyster Flex bands. Moving on, we also have, of course, that now famous outer ring that's on the bezel. This gives it a little bit more of a vintage feel, while also just giving a bit more space to the watch when you consider that before the ceramic bezel used to take up a lot of visual space when you looked at the dial head on. Speaking of the dial, we also see much thinner sub-registers, the indices are also thinner. Everything is just a little bit more streamlined so that again you have a lot more breathing room on the dial itself. And the last major physical change when you look at the Daytona is that it now actually has symmetrical lugs on both sides, whereas the previous one used to have asymmetrical lugs on the 3 o'clock position. But where there's another highlight is on the movement itself. And while this variant doesn't have a display case back, Rolex still decorated the movement as they did on the Platinum versions, and it is still that updated caliber 4131. So still having 72 hours of power reserve, but also differing from the previous model, it has the Chronext escapement and the Paraflex shock absorbers to make it more shock resistant. So unlike most new variants of Rolex where the changes are so subtle you can barely perceive them, this, at least as far as Rolex goes, is a comprehensive overhaul of the model and a great addition to the Rolex catalog when you consider that the previous generation's Daytona had been around since 2016 with a ceramic bezel and went barely unchanged since the year 2000 if you count the steel bezel variant. So a great addition, and we're glad to have it here in the collection at Chronext. So that's just our top picks of the best watches that we've seen in 2023, but let us know in the comments, what are your favorite releases from 2023 and what do you want to see released in 2024? Of course, if you like this video, make sure you like it and share it. If you want to see more videos from us every week, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell as well. And we have playlists for all the major brands that we feature on the channel, so make sure you look at those if you liked any of these watches. In any case, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you throughout the new year.